Once upon a time, in the noisy but lively town of Olu, lived a very fine man whose name was Ugo. If you see this Ugo, you will know that God took his time to create him. He was tall like a NEPA pole, his chest wide like a Yamaha generator. His smile alone can make a woman burn her car on fire because Ugo was a pleasant sight to behold. He owned several businesses in Olu Market, selling wines, provisions, and even electronics. Ugo was so successful that many called him the bullion van, the man who printed money like a central bank. All the young women in Olu were all married to Ugo in their head. Some made up stories on how Ugo was head over heels in love with them. Chinonye was one of such women. She was the popular pharmacist who was dating Ugo in her head. Every time somebody asked her, Chinonye, when will you marry? She would clear her throat proudly and reply, Don't worry, Ugo and I are taking things slow. He just bought me perfume from ShopRite last week. Meanwhile, Ugo did not even know that she existed. In fact, he walked past her shop every day, but Chinonye did not even have the balls to stop him. She would stare at him like a goat, her eyes wide open, her legs shaking like a generator without fuel. Sometimes she would even rehearse greetings in her head, but when the time came for her to say hi to him, Chinonye would freeze like a pillar of salt, swallowing spit like a hungry man who the waiter skipped at a wedding. Her friend Helen also had a crush on Ugo, but he did so well that even Chinonye would swear that Helen hated Ugo with a passion. What she did not know was that her own obsession was still learning work. Helen had a secret diary where every entry began with the words, Dear husband. She wrote down full conversations that never happened, how he proposed to her, what he whispered into her ears, the names of their unborn children. In her mind, Ugo was her husband, and she was already his wife, and every other woman was a clown performing in the circus. Helen even named her favorite teddy Ugo. She sleeps with the teddy all night, pretending that it was him. Sometimes she would spray it with perfume and hug it tightly, calling his name as she wished him good night. Helen was the pretender of the year. She phoned her babe outside, mocking Chinonye for being so obsessed with Ugo, whilst in her room she was hugging her teddy bear, pretending to be married to him. Dami, on the other hand, was another woman who had her eyes on Ugo. She was a renowned prostitute whose body count was more than the beans in Mama Nkechi's akara pot. Yet, deep within her heart, she believed that she was the right fit for him. After all, which man in this town can resist me? I would just catwalk past his shop and he will follow me like a mosquito. She boasted to her fellow night crawlers, who all stood around like vultures. Truth is that most women in Olu had their own private fantasies about Ugo. Mama Informer, for instance, she was the okpa seller who swore that Ugo once winked at her when he came to buy her delicious okpa. Blessing the tailor was also another woman who told everyone that cared to listen that Ugo proposed to her in the dream. She began to wear makeup to the market to impress Ugo, not knowing that the makeup made her look like a popular masquerade. What was even worse was the heels that she wore that made her legs look like chopsticks about to snap in two. Blessing would walk proudly across the market like a newborn giraffe, telling everyone that cared to listen that Ugo was about to propose to her. In fact, she spent her time sewing her wedding dress, convinced that her wedding was around the corner. Ugo had nothing on King Solomon at this point. If Solomon had 1,000 women, Ugo had more imaginary wives, lurking in every corner of the market, wives that he never knew he had. In fact, every other person in the market knew his wives by name, except Ugo himself, who was an expert in minding his business. He came to the market early and remained in his shop, minding the only business that paid him, whilst his supposed wives walked past his shop like ostriches, stretching their necks, shaking their waists, and flaunting their figures, hoping for Ugo to notice their presence. But Ugo did not even blink. If you like, wear eyelashes long enough to sweep the whole market. Ugo would still be focused on his calculator, punching in the only figures that mattered to him. His sales boy Chukuma was the complete opposite of who he was. Chukuma made it his duty to be in everyone's business. He was like a stubborn fly, perching where he was not invited. When people quarreled in the market, Chukuma was the kind of boy to stand next to them, fueling the flames. She insulted your mother, oh, he would say, not caring the chaos that would follow from such a revelation. Chukuma had ears of a bat and the mouth of a parrot. If someone sneezed in the corner of the market, Chukuma would hear it, and before the sneezer could wipe their nose, the whole market would know who sneezed and how they sneezed, and even what the sneeze smelled like. So when rumors began to spread that Ugo was preparing for marriage, Chukuma was the first to hear it, and like the parrot that he was, he wasted no time in spreading the news. Have you heard? He announced loudly, balancing on one leg in front of Mama Ifeoma's upper stand. My oga is getting married soon. Oh. Yes, so it's confirmed. No more delay. The women froze, their mouths hanging open like padlocks without keys. Which one of us? Chinonye asked, her heart beating like a drum in her chest. Chukuma folded his arms and shook his head mysteriously. I cannot reveal her name, oh, but all I will say is that she's very close and my oga will soon ask her to be his wife. Helen nearly collapsed. That night, she wrote in her diary that finally her husband Ugo had made his decision to finally marry her. She even spent an hour practicing her new signature with Ugo's surname. Dami, on the other hand, painted her lips so red that when she smiled, it looked like palm oil had spilled across her teeth. She told her fellow night crawlers that Ugo was about to make her his wife. All the women waited patiently for Ugo to approach them, but Ugo, he kept minding his business. However, he knew one thing for sure, that someone was spreading rumors about him and Ugo needed to know who it was. One afternoon, as Ugo was arranging goods in his shop, Chinonye gathered the courage to meet with him, her heels shaking like a newborn goat as she stepped forward and began to clear her throat. Ugo, she whispered as she began to speak. Please, just tell me the truth. Am I the one you are planning to marry? Ugo smiled faintly and replied, by tomorrow morning, you will know. From that moment, he set a trap. He wanted to find the parrot that was scattering his name all over the market. So, he decided to test his suspicion. First, he called his salesboy Chukuma and said loudly enough for only him to hear, Chukuma, don't tell anyone no, but I'm preparing to marry my favorite pot. Chukuma's eyes widened like a lantern as he nodded quickly, pretending to zip his lips. Later that evening, Ugo met another trader who he suspected, and just to confuse matters, he told the man that his bride's name was Uloma. My brother, keep it a secret, but my bride's name is Uloma. She's from the faraway village, and nobody in this market knows who she is. The man simply nodded and went his way. By the next morning, the rumor that swept through Olu market was not about Uloma. It was about Ugo getting married to a pot. From Mama Ifeoma's upper stand, to Blessing's tailor shop, to Dami and her night crawlers, everyone was saying the same thing. Have you heard? Ugo is marrying a pot, a whole cooking pot. Ugo laughed quietly to himself. He didn't need any prophet to tell him who the gossip was. It could only be Chukuma, his sales boy. So that evening, he called his boy and said calmly, Chukuma, the ears of a bat and the mouth of a parrot can destroy even the biggest man. Next time, if you must talk, let it be about something meaningful and not about the life of a person. Ugo relieved Chukuma of his job that day, knowing that having someone like him around was more dangerous than leaving palm wine in the hands of a drunkard. However, the damage had already been done. The rumor had spread faster than Hamatan fire. No matter how Ugo explained, nobody believed him. When he said that it was only a trap to catch the gossip, people replied, oh, that's exactly what a man who married a pot would say. Even the women who once fought to be Mrs. Ugo began to laugh at him, calling him a joke. Chinonye, whose eyes once followed Ugo like a CCTV camera, quickly denied ever liking him. A whole pharmacist like me marry a man that is in love with a pot? God forbid. Am I not loved at home that I'll be sharing my man with a kitchen utensil? She hissed, fanning herself as if the rumor was burning her skin. Helen, too, the one who used to write dear husband in her secret diary, tore out all the pages, threw threw her teddy bear away and shouted, "Nonsense! I cannot be competing with a stainless steel pot." Dami, the ninth queen, wiped off her red lipstick and told her fellow night crawlers, "Even me, I have standards. If Ugo prefers pot, let him go. In fact, let the pot service him." Mama Ifoma, the Okpa seller, who once swore that Ugo winked at her, suddenly declared that it must have been a mistake that day. It wasn't a wink. It was ordinary dust that entered his eye. Blessing, the tailor, hid the wedding gown that she had been sewing for herself. She folded it quickly and said, "Since the wife is a pot, maybe I should just reduce the gown to small size so it will fit her properly." From that day forward, the entire market refused to take Ugo seriously again. Children ran after him chanting songs. "Pot husband, pot husband, husband of a kitchen pot." Even goats in the market bleated like they were mocking him. When Ugo walked past, they would go, "Meh!" and the children would laugh, saying, "Even the goats know that he's married to a pot." No matter how Ugo explained, nobody listened. It was a trap to catch the gossip, he would shout, but people only shook their heads and replied him saying, "See how food has finished this man. He now loves his pot and even calls it his bride." Soon, Ugo became the biggest joke in Olu. The women who once fought each other to be his wife now avoided him like a plague. Chinonye started carrying herself with pride again, saying, "Abeg o, I'm a pharmacist and not a pot rack." Helen burnt her diary and went about telling people that God saved her from marrying a madman. "When I tell girls not to be desperate for marriage, it's because of things like this," she said as she narrated how she turned Ugo down and even left him on his knees. "Maybe it was my heartbreak that made him run mad," Helen told anyone that cared to listen. "He begged me to marry him. I refused, and see how frustration pushed him into the arms of a pot." Her friend Chinonye almost dropped her jaw when she heard Helen giving that testimony with confidence, telling anyone that cared to listen that she rejected Ugo. "Eh?" Chinonye blinked. "Helen, you?" Helen raised her shoulders proudly. "Of course. Who do you think he truly wanted? It was me now. But I, Helen, refused. I cannot reduce myself to the level of pots and pans." The words struck Chinonye like lightning. Her heart pounded in her chest. All this while, she thought she and Helen were in the same boat, both mocking Ugo from afar, both pretending that he was not their concern. She had poured out her feelings to Helen, cried in her presence, even sworn that Helen would never understand what it meant to secretly love someone. Yet, here was Helen, chest out, claiming that she was the one who Ugo pursued. Chinonye felt so betrayed. "So all this time, you two were in love with Ugo?" she asked, her voice trembling like a child caught stealing meat from the pot. Helen's eyes darted nervously. For a moment, she wanted to deny it, but her pride was stronger than her caution. She flung her braids back and said, "Yes, I'm not just in love. He was mine and mine alone." The crowd around them gasped. Mama Ifoma placed both hands on her head. Dami bursted out in laughter as her fake lashes nearly fell off. Even Blessing, the tailor, shook her head as she watched two educated women dragging husband with a pot. Chinonye's face burned with shame. She had confided in Helen, told her how her legs shook each time Ugo passed, how her stomach tied itself in knots when she imagined him smiling at her. All the while, Helen had pretended, mocking her softly, acting as though she despised Ugo. Now, seeing her friend confess so boldly, Chinonye felt a mixture of anger and humiliation. "You are a hypocrite," she screamed. "You mocked me. You laughed at me. Yet, you two carried secret love in your chest like smuggled contraband." Helen's eyes hardened. Better a hypocrite than a fool who was blinded in love. At least Ugo loved me, whilst he did not even know your name. The market roared with laughter. Even the goats bleated louder in mockery. From that day, not only was Ugo the man who married a pot, but Chinonye and Helen became the two women whose friendship cracked because of a man who did not even know their names. One morning, everyone arrived at the market and met Ugo sitting in front of his shop with a huge pot. He placed it carefully on the chair beside him as he punched some numbers into his calculator. The people laughed louder as children pointed at him and began to sing, "Pot husband, pot husband, husband of a stainless pot." The women whispered behind his back. Some hissed loudly, declaring, Imagine fine man like this, wasting himself on a pot. What a pity. Others swore that he had run mad. Day after day, Ugo ignored them. But mockery has a way of growing wings. Soon, envy joined the rumor. Some of the women, still bitter that Ugo had not noticed them, decided that the pot was the problem. How can a fine man like this look at all of us with all our beauty and decide to marry a pot? They said to themselves as they made up their mind to destroy it, hoping that Ugo returns back to his senses once the pot is destroyed. So one night, when the market was quiet and the moon was hiding behind thick clouds, a group of women crept to Ugo's wine shop. With dry palm fronds and kerosene, they set fire to the shop. Flames leapt high, swallowing the roof, crackling through the shelves as the fire intensified. Bottles burst open as the smoke darkened the night sky. The shop that had taken Ugo years to build turned into ash overnight. By morning, when Ugo arrived to open his shop, he met the place in ashes. He dropped to his knees as he wept bitterly, wondering what could have caused the fire. The women gathered as they watched him cry out in pain. Let's see what will happen to him now that the pot is gone, they said as they laughed mockingly and watched him from a distance as Ugo pushed through the ruins. Hey, yeah, pot husband, where's your wife now? Some women said to him mockingly as Ugo ignored them completely as he combed through the rubble. To everyone's surprise, the pot sat firm amongst the ashes, untouched by the fire. Ugo quickly opened it and a rich aroma of wine filled the air. Curious, he dipped the cup and tasted the wine and was shocked at what he discovered. The fire had done something miraculous to it. The wine was sweeter, stronger, more refined than before. It was unlike anything he had ever tasted in his life, and Ugo all of a sudden began to scream out in joy. The people all looked at him shocked, wondering if his madness was now advancing. See madness, oh, he's still drinking from the pot, even after losing everything to the fire, they said amongst themselves as the governor's convoy drove by. The governor was passing through Olu when he saw the crowd and decided to stop. He asked what was happening and was told that Ugo's shop went up in flames the night before. The governor decided to see for himself when he caught sight of Ugo drinking from the strange pot in excitement. Filled with curiosity, he decided to taste the wine and Ugo offered him a cup, his voice still shaky from tears. Your Excellency, please taste this, he said to the governor, who sipped the wine and froze. His eyes lit up like a little child as he sipped the wine again and again, rolling it around his tongue as he declared,